to interview a very amazing veterans on the show, and we've been having highlighting some amazing veteran stories. And one of our guests today is Michael Anthony. He's the CEO of Gratitude America. Michael, thanks for stopping by. How are you?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's as a leader of a nonprofit, I'm super passionate about, telling our story and trying to let people know, all the good work that we're doing. So it's an absolute pleasure.
So, how did this start for you? Kind of give me the story of how Gratitude America started.
Yeah, so Gratitude America itself was founded in 2011 by Lewis and Joni Jordan. Lewis spent like 50 years in commercial aviation, so he was the CEO of some major airlines. He founded AirTran Airways, which was his airline, and then he sold it in 2008 to Southwest and retired. And when he did in 2008, the war in Iraq was going through what was known as the surge. There wasn't going well, and they sent a ton of troops into Iraq to try to fix some of the problems and to get ahead of the terrorism that was there. And the troops were just coming back. All the stories, and all of your viewers and listeners have heard, the stories and the plight of American service members coming back home from the war. And so Lewis had just wanted to do something. He and his wife got together and started brainstorming and said, we've got to do something different. And so initially, Gratitude America it was started off sort of as a jobs program. Lewis was, very influential in the business space, thought he could help, veterans with jobs in their transition after leaving the military. And what we started to learn was veterans can't even begin to focus on transitioning and getting new employment until they address the struggles in mental health. And so that was many, many years ago. The organization's official sort of start was in 2011. It took some time to get that going, and we began doing programs a few years later. And so I entered into Gratitude America in 2016 after having been the product of one of our programs that had an absolute impact on my life. And I did a total 180 from a previous career to come lead the organization.
So, tell me how that happened. How did Gratitude America help you, and then it led you to become the CEO?
Sure. Well, so I actually was an executive. I was responsible for a training program in the Fortune 100 program, or excuse me, program, Fortune 100 company. And so I had a big background in training, but by all accounts, had a very good life, was very well put together. But I had been in the Army Reserve for many, many years. Ultimately, I retired last year from the reserves, but I had spent many years in that environment of a civilian role. And then I would get called up for duty, deploy overseas, do a combat tour, and then come back into my environment, the corporate environment. And I distinctly remember there was one sort of sentinel moment for me. I had been in a combat zone on a Thursday and literally was shot at. The following Thursday, because I wasn't in the regular Army, I deployed back home and I was back in the corporate office in the break room. And I remember there were two women in there and they were complaining that they were out of a certain kind of coffee cream, French vanilla or something, and they were losing their minds over it. And I had this just crisis moment because I had just been shot at a week ago, and now people are complaining about something super trivial. And so that really began to weigh down my heart. I really developed a drinking problem, started drinking more and more to cope with these symptoms, and started to isolate myself. I was having nightmares, a lot of just very negative things. And I would put myself back together and go to work. And so I felt like I was holding it together well until my wife approached me and she said, "Hey, I think you need some help." And she had found Gratitude America on Facebook, a very small organization, and said, "I think this is for you." And so a little reluctantly, I went to one of their programs in 2015, and it had an absolute impact on my life. And so after that 4-day military sport retreat program, started volunteering, taking out trash, cooking meals, doing whatever I could do to help. And I kind of volunteered my way into a job. So I was hired by Mr. Jordan in 2016 to lead the organization.
That's fantastic. And I mean, in so many ways, we allow, certain stressors to really cause us to not perform to the level we need to perform at. You looked at veterans, and when they transition, one of the biggest problems is, that they have gone through such trials and tribulations. They get back to the real world and they don't have that specific set schedule. It becomes difficult for them. Do you see that as one of the big hard things transitioning? And I talk to Sean Walsh about this all the time, that, hey, they're pretty good, even though they have some issues, right? But once they get to civilian life, it's a totally different animal, and it's much more difficult for them to be able to deal with the everyday life of being back, maybe seeing their wives more, maybe their relationships, their family, different things that set them off, where the military kind of keeps you in that bubble in a way to leave in.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Sean's well versed in that. I mean, any veteran who's kicked around in the desert knows this to be true. It seems trite, but one of the things that I'm fond of saying is, in the Army, I had one job. They feed you, they clothe you, they house you. Now the job's dangerous, but it's singularly focused, and you have a lot of camaraderie. You have a lot of support with the brothers to your left and to your right. And when you come home, that there's just this big letdown, right? You lose the brotherhood, you lose the structure, the rigidity, and you step into this almost alien world that has been spinning the whole time you were gone. And it's very hard to sort of reintegrate. That's where most veterans really get hung up, is this reintegration into civilian life. Many feel like, I have to now sort of become a civilian. And what we teach them at Gratitude America is, you need to take that military training and those experiences, which served you very, very well in the military and kept you alive, in fact, and makes you a high performing operator. And you have to, sort of do some retraining and sort of tooling of those skills to allow you not to be, let's say, an average civilian, but to be a warrior at home, right? The veterans that walk among us have a strength that some of the civilian population doesn't have, but we often get labeled, feel bad for this veteran because they have PTSD, or, a lot of veterans are portrayed very poorly because of the mental health struggles. I mean, 700,000 veterans just from this 20-year conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan are struggling with the invisible wounds of war. So we get painted in a negative light, but there's a strength within us. And what organizations like ourselves are trying to do is to, sort of re-add training and retool those wonderful skills that they have, put a little dimmer switch on, we're not in combat, but if things get ramped up, we know what to do at the same time, because we've done the hard things and because we know what really, really horrible things are. It allows us, conversely, to love even more, to be even more tender, more gentle, right? More caring, more compassionate. But it's a hard transition, and it takes a little bit of guidance. It takes some training in order to build that muscle.
It totally does. And what do you think that's the biggest, how you guys help to get veterans on track?
So, the real key to all, we have several programs, and I don't want to get too granular talking about each of them, because I think the theme and the base that runs throughout them is the more important thing. And I think for your listeners, veterans as well as civilians could benefit from the lesson. So what we focus on, all of our programs are rooted in the concept of post-traumatic growth. Many people don't know about post-traumatic growth or haven't heard the term post-traumatic growth.
Hmm.
They know what trauma is, and
Yes.
everybody knows what PTSD is. And
Right.
so, essentially, to explain, the traditional treatments for like post-traumatic stress disorder are very, very focused on the event, the traumatic event itself. There's exposure therapy, there's talk therapy, there's a lot of looking back at the event and trying to desensitize ourselves by telling these same stories over and over again. The other thing people do is, of course, get prescribed medications. We're not anti-medication, but the challenge is that medications are much easier to prescribe to try to help a population that is so large that there are very few providers. And so I think medication kind of becomes a very easy way to help people grow sort of beyond, or to dull the effects of the trauma. That's the more traditional model. And we're not against that per se, but the concept of post-traumatic growth is to say, the bad event happened. And while the event itself was terrible, there's nothing good about that particular event. And when we're talking about veterans, often the event is bad things in combat, right? Things that you've
Right.
seen. But for the average civilian, it could be a horrible car wreck. It could be a rape of a woman. I mean, there's a lot of terrible things that happen to people. But rather than focusing on the event itself and looking in the rearview mirror, the concept of post-traumatic growth says we have to give a nod to those things, but we need to spend time focusing on the effects of the trauma, the lessons of the trauma, the things that can grow and become useful beyond the trauma. So rather than driving the car staring in the rearview mirror, I shift my focus and I drive with that big windshield in front of me instead of the 6-inch mirror behind me. You can't drive the car staring behind you.
Exactly.
The rearview mirror is for reference, it's not for residents, but most people hang out looking behind. And if you keep reading the same chapter over and over again, you never turn the page. And that's what post-traumatic growth is all about, is training these veterans to understand the effects of the trauma and the beauty that can come from having done the hard things.
And that makes the successful people become successful is the hard things.
Mm-hmm.
If you are always never challenged, you're not going to be able to overcome an adversity. And adversity just happens to everybody. But
Yep.
it's how do we take that adversity and take the seed and benefit in every adversity, as Napoleon Hill talks about.
Yep.
So I think in so many ways that's so important. And you do it differently. And that's what I guess really got you involved in this organization is you're looking at things in a little bit of a different way, in a different light.
Yes. The My background, as I said, is in training and education. I went to school to study to be a school teacher. I taught young people initially, and then I shifted to corporate education, so teaching leaders, executives, and corporations. And now I'm just training veterans. So I'm really using these same skills throughout with just different populations. And I think the thing that people have to know about Gratitude America and the work that we do is we offer training and not treatment. We're not qualified, clinicians. If somebody needs, therapy or, a clinician because their mental house is on fire, then that's where they need to go. We're not anti that. What we are is once the dust is settled and you're ready to now emerge, from the chaos that is that traumatic event, there is light right on the other side. There's an opportunity for growth. I always use the analogy of if your kitchen were to catch on fire, there's only one group of people that you're going to call. You're going to call the fire department. They're going to come put the
Exactly.
fire out, right? You're not going to call anybody else. So when they come and they put the fire out, the thing that's interesting is it would be laughable for me to say, "Hey, while y'all are here, can you rebuild this too? Can you put the kitchen back together?" They don't do that,
100%.
right? They leave it a mess. You hire a totally different person to put it back together. And Neil, you often would use that tragedy as an opportunity to make your kitchen better. Maybe I'll put in better countertops or a double oven. So that's the thing is these traumas, these things that send us down to our deepest, darkest depths are also opportunities for growth and change and allow us to emerge better than we were before. Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. But when you tell somebody that when they're struggling, they don't get it. They can't see it because they're wallowing in the struggle, right? So we have to guide them to help them
100%.
on the uptick.
I love it. I think people need to find out more information. This is again a short radio slash podcast interview, a lot more that we can delve into. But the best place people can go, especially if they're transitioning and need help, especially when it comes to mental health wise, to get the right resource and stuff, where can they go?
Yeah, we'd love to have them check out our website at gratitudeamerica.org. All of our socials are also Gratitude America with no space between the gratitude and the America. You can learn lots of things there. You can also search us out. If you just Google us, you can find the Great Nonprofits website, which is a rating by constituents of nonprofits to see what actual veterans are saying about their experiences with us. And, I would just encourage you to, if you're struggling, veterans tend to isolate. It's important that whether you seek out help from us or whether you seek out help from anybody else, from your church, from your family, from your community, from another nonprofit, just do it, right? You have to, because the self-isolation is no way for you to heal and really become, the person that you want to be post-military.
All right. Thanks again, sir. Thanks, Michael.
My
You're
pleasure.
listening and watching the Neil Haley Show.